Hello everyone. I often talk about bodybuilding stars of different eras, but one way or another I go back to the origins of the golden era, and today we are talking about an unconditional aesthete. One giant killer, an athlete who was put on a par with Macaulay, Labrada, and Lee Priest. Danny Padilla is the epitome of bodybuilding, as he was conceived, but too low height. The will of the judges and IFBB organizers led to the fact that he almost never won in his entire career. Or rather just once, and is now known much less than he deserves relative to the form that he once demonstrated. The story of Danny's formation as an athlete is a well-known path of overcoming. He was born on April 3, 1951 in America. Despite his small stature, Danny showed good results in wrestling, football, gymnastics, and even basketball at school. He was constantly offered to enroll in some kind of sports section. 10 children in the family, lack of money, low height inherited from the mother, all this is in a piggy bank of excuses for which he should not have taken place as a bodybuilder. But Danny reasoned differently. Already at the age of 7, he caught fire with the idea of looking like an athlete, even then just emerging bodybuilding, and realized that with his height of 157 centimeters in a good way, all that remains is to train with iron. One day, he and his father went to the bookstore. Suddenly, Danny's gaze was caught by the cover of a magazine with a photo of Larry Scott. Then the boy proudly declared to his father, "This is who I will be when I grow up." The father said, "Okay." He took the boy by the ear and led him out of the store. However, a very stubborn character decided that he would achieve this at all costs. He firmly decides to become a professional bodybuilder so that autographs and interviews would be taken from him. He really dreamed of glorifying his surname. The boy finally persuaded his father to buy him this magazine. There was no money for the gym, so all the available tools went into use, up to the manholes. It would be something to squeeze. But when there are 12 of you in the family, you can't really eat enough. So it turned out that in high school Danny weighed 67 kilograms at most. Little strokes fell great oaks. Soon Danny made his debut on the stage of the local Mr. Rochester tournament and became its youngest winner in history. Danny's advantage was that he trained, including in the style of powerlifters and weightlifters. And from them, he learned the key principles of working with iron and the correct technique of performing movements. He was also short, but very strong. For example, he squatted with a weight of 225 kilograms for several repetitions. Throughout the rest of his career, he preferred basic exercises, not without the addition of isolation exercises, of course. But at the same time, his soul belonged to bodybuilding. Danny continued to speak. Joe Weider noticed him and offered to represent his federation. Not everyone knows that in addition to the competition, he was also supposed to become one of the main characters of the legendary film Pumping Iron, but as a result, there are almost no shots of him in the documentary drama. Why? The thing is, Danny was supposed to represent the USA at the Mr. Universe tournament, but each country could field a limited number of participants. As a result, Weider preferred Danny, with his height of 157 centimeters, to another heavyweight, but he found out in the case that he would not perform almost a day of the tournament. He was simply deceived. But immediately he got a chance to play for Portugal, which he didn't really have a relationship with, but this case didn't seem to be a problem. To the shocked shouts of the Americans, and not only them, Danny nevertheless took the stage, showed excellent form, among other things, reached the top 3. But as a result was disqualified after a complaint from observers, as he was supposed to play for the United States and represent another country. He had no right. At the same time, he is still confident in the case that he won that tournament in absentia in terms of form. But we do not have the opportunity to verify this in the footage of the Chronicle. Almost all the fragments from Danny were cut by the authors of Pumping Iron during the installation. But Danny's main disappointment was ahead. In the following years, there was a persistent confrontation between him and Muhammad Macaulay. Muhammad won Mr. Universe in '76, and Danny won in '77. It was an interesting one, a duel. At the same time, Padilla continued to actively perform, time after time demonstrated excellent fullness, but the judges often did not pay attention to him and the quality. In 1981, Danny, who always focused in the diet not so much on protein, but rather on carbohydrates and did not exclude them until the very performance, his diet deserves attention. He consumed no more than 60 grams of protein per day, but ate a huge amount of carbohydrates in the off-season, and preparing for competitions never brought them to zero. Even on the day of the competition, believing that sugar is simply necessary for the normal functioning of the brain. In that very 1981, Padilla decided to make a night move and play on quality. Danny, who was already short and not the most bulky, took the stage with sunken cheeks and carved muscles. But that Olympia '81 will surpass even the tournament of the 80th in terms of ambiguity of judging. Danny Padilla, Roy Callender, Tom Platz, each of them put up almost the best form in his entire career, but the first two places went to Chris Dickerson, who just that year never got into shape, and Franco Colombo, who didn't even seem to aim at that form, but was Arnold's close friend, and you know the connections yourself. After the tournament, when the judges asked about the legs, according to which Colombo was inferior to almost every first one, they noted that they did not really judge just by the legs, but the general terrible conditions, bulging gynecomastia, and the square figure as a whole were nothing, and it was Franco who became the champion. That's what they reasoned in the early '80s, and yes, according to Padilla, it was a robbery, and not only Danny was robbed. The same Platz was almost the best in his career after he suffered a bicep injury and never returned to his level. But today we are talking about Danny, who chose bodybuilding as his life's work, in which any decision can be explained by the simple phrase, "I am a judge, I see it that way." And someone will say, "Where's your critical thinking?" Danny said that he should have won at that Olympia or definitely be higher, and you immediately believed, but why would someone at least have an independent opinion? I agree, and in these very fragments in front of you on the screen, Danny himself interviews Frank Zane, who saw that tournament with his own eyes and certainly understands bodybuilding. Zane admitted that Danny was damn good at one time and deserved the title of Mr. Olympia in '81. And yes, of course, we will make a reservation that Frank's opinion is also not the truth, but still this is the opinion of a person in the topic, moreover, Mr. Olympia and authority for many. After that Olympia, judging by the history of performances, Padilla competed further, but according to the athlete himself, after that disappointment in '81, he never came to his senses. And while others sparkled in the rays of glory and camera flashes, Danny gave up on everything and returned to his native places to work in a grocery store, my father's store. And it seemed that there were prospects and the form allowed them to perform, but there was no longer the same desire. And it's funny that Danny's motivation was returned by an arrogant amateur who trained in his gym, won a couple of tournaments, and shouted everywhere about his successes. And Danny himself said that of course you were not bad at one time, but that time has passed. After that, Danny recalled that he decided to show the upstart who the father was here. Prepared for the Night of Champions in 1989, transferred, came to New York, was sure that he would enter at least the top 5, but unaccustomed to the right turn, was forced to make a detour through 8 huge blocks and was late for the start of the meeting of participants, who decided by a joint vote to exclude him from the list of athletes. Is it a shame? Yes, of course, but Padilla has never been lucky in this regard. Afterward, he remembered that after all these annoying falls and misses, right up to the very end of his career, he performed as if on automatic, by inertia. He loved this business, he wanted to remain a part of it, he just got used to performing in the end, but the old passion was gone. At the same time, he watched with sadness as the era of which he was a part was passing away, and he did not like the new athletes. Padilla recognized the level of the same Lee Haney, but believed that he was clearly inferior to the greatness of the same Sergio Oliva in terms of physics or Arnold in terms of influence on the development of bodybuilding. Well, Serge Nibur remained his favorite athlete for all time, whose aesthetics always fascinated Danny. It's nice that the case is still remembered, and the same Lee Priest, who was often compared to Danny, spoke warmly about the athlete of the last era. Then his words: "We've never trained together, but we've just seen each other a few times, and yes, he's a nice and humble man. At one time, he was just a great bodybuilder, but you know, history remembers many like Muhammad Makawi, Lilabrata, Muhammad bin Aziza. In those years, there were several guys of short stature who nevertheless could beat many taller rivals. Yes, even Franco Colombo can be remembered in this regard, although as for me, Danny had a more complete and elaborated figure. The overall muscle mass, symmetry, and elaboration, everything was on the level, everything was as it should be. It's true, I've seen collages where people try to compare me to Padilla, but that's another story. In general, he is an excellent athlete and a person. At the same time, athletes like Danny, with certain nuances, could well perform today. In the category up to 96 kilograms, he had all the features of a top bodybuilder. And although in some pictures it may seem that he was out of shape, as a rule, it was the depth of the muscles that was the hallmark. There are some athletes whose figure is called for the ages, which would still look at the level and whose shape would impress even today. And this is just about Danny on the case. An athlete of the old school who, at the age of 73, is still in shape. For his part, he did everything he could and holds a well-deserved place on the list of giant killers. Is also included in the IFBB Hall of Fame and is considered an athlete who could deservedly become the winner of the Olympia. Share your opinion about Danny in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you liked the release, please support the project with a like and subscribe to the channel. Sports Guru was with you. See you later.